Hey everyone, and welcome back to another book video. In this video, I want to talk about Evenings and Weekends by Oisin McKenna. This book came out last year in 2024. He is a young Irish author. This is his debut novel. I heard about this book from one of the booktubers that I follow, Jack in the Books, Jack Edwards. He has launched his own book club through the app Fable, and this is the first book he selected. I think Jack really loves this book, and he's mentioned it in a lot of his videos. And Jack is British, living in London, I believe, so I think he responded really strongly to the depiction of life in London, as well as London as kind of a character in this novel. So I thought that was pretty interesting. I love it when cities have a central role to play in a story. So I checked it out from the library, and here are my thoughts. So to give you a bit of an overview of the plot of the book, basically we're following a set of characters that are pretty tightly linked to each other. We mostly follow the point of view of Phil, who has an older brother, Callum, and then Maggie, who is best friends with Phil and is currently dating a guy named Ed, who is best friends with Callum. So these are the four central characters. They're all from the same town in the UK, but living in London now. I'll start with what I liked about the book. I do think it's very well written. It's pretty clever. It feels pretty honest in terms of the feelings and emotions that each of these characters is dealing with. We also do cover the perspectives. I think another key point of view is Phil and Callum's mom, Rosaline. She has cancer. She's been able to tell Callum, but not her younger son. And her marriage, she's from Ireland, and her upbringing in Dublin and kind of how she feels her childhood was very repressed. So I did enjoy, I think, the exploration of these inner feelings, and in particular feelings of shame, because Phil also grew up as closeted. And I feel that a lot of the interior reflections that we got from Rosaline or Phil or Maggie felt very contemporary and true. I won't spoil the plot, but the kind of main driver that is propelling the plot forward is a piece of information that Phil has about Ed from their childhood and whether he wants to tell Maggie. I think another thing driving the plot forward is Maggie's not fully sure that she wants to settle down with Ed. She is pregnant, and I think it was unplanned. It didn't seem like either of them could really afford caring for a child, but they decide to move back to the countryside, to their small town, in order to make ends meet. Ed is a courier or a delivery person. So he is working a blue-collar job, and Maggie is working at a cafe. She had an art degree or was an artist previously. So I do feel like these characters, which are working class and trying to make ends meet in London, it was fun to take a dip into their world. Phil is living in a commune warehouse with other young transplants and Londoners. And I feel like the depiction of that kind of lifestyle created an atmosphere and a sense of place that was really interesting to see. There's also another weird external event that happens in the book that all of the characters kind of react to, but I'm not exactly 1,000% sure what I'm supposed to take away from it. I'm sure that this will be covered in other interviews or book videos. I think Jack in the Books is going to interview the author, but basically there is a whale that gets stuck in the Thames in the river, and the marine biologist who goes to try to rescue the whale or figure out how to get the whale unstuck, the whale is kind of stranded because the water's too shallow, bears a striking resemblance to Princess Diana. So then she's referred to as the Princess of Wales, because obviously Princess Di was the Princess of Wales, and this is a whale. So throughout the book, the characters kind of like comment on like, oh, the poor whale, or like, oh, let's go take a look at the whale. I think it's kind of cool because it's just like a weird thing that's happening, and it like adds to the quirkiness of London, and it also adds a sense of time as well, like place and time, because I think this book, even though it doesn't say in the timeline, actually I think the book itself takes place in 2019, if I'm remembering correctly, like before COVID, but clearly Oisin wrote this during COVID or around that time. And I feel like all of us that have lived through the pandemic also understand this weird feeling of like caring about your normal day-to-day activities while something extremely bizarre and once in a lifetime is occurring in the outside world. So that's kind of what I got from this like random beached whale. There's probably like deeper meaning that someone else smarter than me can like pull out from what Oisin was trying to do with the whale as a symbol. But I wouldn't give this a full like 5 stars, maybe like 3.5 or 4 stars, for a couple reasons. The first has to do with pacing, and I think this is kind of like a debut novel issue or a first novel issue. A lot of the book hinted at various reveals in a way that felt like annoying to me as the reader. Like one of the things that's hinted at all throughout the book is that Rosaline, which is Phil and Callum's mom, had like a childhood crush on another woman or a girl in her class. And because she was brought up in a very rigid Catholic Irish environment, she was taught to like push all the shame to feel shame and feel guilt about any type of like sexuality. So for example, when you do a cartwheel, like your knickers shouldn't show. That's like one of the things she always harps on. And then B, to like push that shame down. And it's just teased over and over, like this girl's name, Pauline. Like, who is Pauline? She's thinking about Pauline, to the point where it was just actually annoying to me. I was like, this is done way too heavy-handed of a way. First of all, I can kind of guess that she had like these repressed feelings or is bisexual, so it's not even that good of a reveal. And then secondly, it was just mentioned way too many times. Like I think you can mention it a few times, or you can very in a nuanced, subtle way build towards the reveal. But that was one that was like too forced, I felt. And then it happened a few other times. Another example is Phil experiences a traumatic event, basically an assault, in a public park in London. And I think like once or twice hinting at it and using that as a way to flesh out this character and almost explain why he's having issues with his current relationship and to build his psyche is great. Obviously, like that's what you do to build a character. But the way Oisin kept like hinting at it, it almost like made it crude, like almost disrespected the experience, I feel. Like I remember especially there was one chapter where the chapter ended with, but Phil remembered what happened that night in the park. And then, so it's like a cliffhanger, and then it went to a different perspective in the next chapter. So I feel like literally putting it as a cliffhanger makes it kind of a cheap trick. So I think there were some issues around Oisin trying to have these revelations or these reveals of these incidents that have happened in his character's past and how that kind of puts them in the situation they are in today. But the way it was executed came off as a little flippant or like even like sensationalized, and I'm not sure that that was his intent. The second thing that I think the book could have benefited from is editing out some of the side characters' point of views. So each chapter, it's an omniscient narrator, but each chapter follows one character at a time. And so I thought the chapters that were showing the feelings and thoughts and experiences of Ed, Maggie, Phil, and Rosaline were really strong, and I really felt that I connected with the characters. But then Oisin also had chapters that were the point of view of Holly, which is Callum's fiance, or other side characters, and because they weren't very well integrated, I feel, into the rest of the novel, it almost felt like telling rather than showing. You know, in writing, you're always supposed to show, don't tell. Like, instead of kind of drawing out maybe the irritations that Holly has in her relationship with Callum, or depicting it through like dialogue or other events that occur, we like have a chapter with Holly just explaining it to us. One, I feel like it's better to just focus on a tighter group of characters. There's too many characters if you really try to include every single point of view. And two, I feel like in doing that, you dilute the power of like the characters you want to focus on, and it makes the side characters' chapters just feel a bit flat and more explanatory. I also felt that way about the chapter that was Steve's point of view, which is Rosaline's husband. I just think that when you have a chapter dedicated to every single character, you do kind of do yourself a disservice. I feel like it forces you to be quite literal and explain like every single character's feelings and thoughts, rather than letting there be some life in the space in between, or, you know, like letting the characters breathe more because you have put up the structures or the main folks that you want to focus on, and then like letting other things just kind of like fill in the gaps. So those are kind of my two main critiques. I've seen a lot of people compare him to Sally Rooney. I don't know. I feel like I don't really see the point in like comparing authors to each other. I mean, they're both young Irish authors. I have been a big fan of Sally Rooney's more recent work. And actually, I'm just very keen also to follow what Oisin puts out next, because I do feel like this book did give off very debut novel vibes. And I've read a few different debut novels, and I think given it's his first book, it is a great achievement, and I really enjoyed reading it. There are just some like nitpicks I had around like the pacing and the number of perspectives that he included. But I'm looking forward to, I hope, joining Jack Edwards. I don't know what he's gonna do, like if there's just group chats or if there's anything else that he has planned. I know he's gonna interview the author. It'll be great to hear the perspective from the author himself. I can definitely sense that a lot of the experiences or content of the novel probably derive from Oisin's own experience as like a young queer man who moved from Ireland to the UK and living in London. I do think that's the strong suit of the book, is when he's kind of depicting the energy of being young in London and being an artist, or kind of living on the edges of, you know, what is like the hipster artist queer scene. It does sound really fun. I feel like we don't have that in Singapore at all. So if I'm going to read a book about like New York or London, I do prefer it to be like that setting. So if any of you have read this, definitely let me know what you think. I think it's worth checking out. Like, he's a very exciting, like, new author. I'm really looking forward to what he writes next. That was Evenings and Weekends by Oisin McKenna.